May I be seated, everyone? I don't see too many one-eyed men walking around, even when the new Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue comes out, and sitting there in the rack at Stewart's. The individual who reaches for that cigarette, don't see his arm missing. And I don't see too many trespassers walking around with 1 foot. What is this about? Morning prayer this morning in the daily office. Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven is like a man who found a treasure in the middle of a field, and he went and sold all that he had and then purchased the field. Or a finding a pearl of great value, sells everything he has to buy that one pearl. The idea is that Jesus is trying to explain to people that when you find the kingdom of heaven, it's something that you so desperately want, you'll do anything for it. Jesus speaks much in the way of what we call hyperbole, or this exaggeration about things to try to prove a point, to try to give us example. And I believe that this is one of those cases that he is talking about. When he talks about if your eye causes you to sin, go ahead and cut it out. I don't believe he's really asking us to take a grapefruit spoon and carve our eyeballs out. Okay? As pleasant as that may sound at, 8:15 on a Sunday morning. I do believe, however, what he's asking for us is that we would understand the desperation that sometimes comes about as we seek the kingdom of God, and also as we get a chance to take a look at whatever it is that separates us from God. And James says, even if you know the right thing and fail to do that, you've committed sin. He puts a different spin on it, rather than the do's and don'ts that we normally think of as far as a checklist goes. God's desire is to have mercy for us. God's desire is that we would come to him in relationship with him. And God's desire is that we would perhaps sacrifice whatever we need to sacrifice in order to be able to get there. But what does that end up looking like in the end? I've seen relationships get destroyed because of that. Is that God's will? I don't think so. I've seen other things that took place that, again, just didn't seem healthy, didn't seem right. Is that God's will? I don't think so. But by the same token, I've also seen the individual that was called perhaps to give up a particular television program because that television program was not healthy for them to be watching. And would they give that television program up? No. Let's have a conversation about anybody who's ever been addicted to anything, whether that be alcohol or heroin or bingo, all right? I say that because Joanne's not here. She's doing great though, okay? She's got several years recovery since we moved down to the area. All right, I'll catch some flack for that later, but that's okay, it's worth it. I do believe that one of the things to bear in mind with all of this is what is it that gets in the way? And what Jesus is trying to describe for us is that there is something that we can recognize that gets in the way. Asking ourselves, is it really worth having? Or perhaps, do we need to set it aside? This could be something so simple as a hobby that we have. My favorite to preach on with regard to this, by the way, my favorite hobby to pick on with this, because I have absolutely no interest in it myself, is golf. Okay? I do. I love to pick on golf for this one. Because there's been many a time when an individual said, I'm sorry, Father, I can't make it to church. I said, why is that? Well, I've got tea time. I said, well, I'm from English background. Tea time is 4:30. You mean you have tea time? No, I got to go play golf. Oh, sacrificing your time in church to go play golf. So, I'll pick on that. But I'll also point the fingers at me as myself. I mean, when it comes to riding motorcycles, when it comes to music, when it comes to playing guitar, when it comes to whatever it is we might do, if it comes in between us and God, I've got to be willing to sacrifice that. I have to be willing to set that aside. There's times when I would love to be going out riding, but I get a phone call. All right, be right there. Oftentimes I'll hop on the bike to get there, by the way. Just a little compromise, Lord. But the idea is laying aside that time, laying aside what it is that I may want to be doing, that may draw me away in order to be able to do what it is that God calls. And am I willing to listen to what it is that God calls? Am I willing to listen to what it is that God has to say to me? There's been times in my life when God has spoken to me, oh, so very, very clearly, very plainly. Not necessarily in this big booming voice out there someplace, but just through other Christians. And they have approached me, and I can hear God in their voice, and I can hear God in their words, and they're saying things to me. And inside, I want to reject that word so bad because it cuts too deep at something that I've kind of held on to, and I really don't want to receive it. Bless you. But if I am to be a faithful Christian, then I have to be willing to sacrifice that for the sake of the kingdom. I have to be willing to lay that aside in order to be able to do whatever it is that God's calling me to do at that particular moment. And that's really what it is that James is talking about. If we were to take a look at this between Jesus' statement in the gospel and James' statement in his letter, they're both talking about the same thing. And that is your willingness to be within the will of God and to follow what God's will is. And whatever is getting in the way of that, your willingness to set that aside. And is it something you can set aside? And how far will we go to extremes? Now, that may apply, or you may have things inside your mind already that you are thinking of. Let's talk about those at some point. Let's pray about those. Maybe you don't. Okay. Don't worry about it right now. There may come a time later on. We'll talk and pray then. But just know, okay, you're not in this alone. You don't have to be. Not anymore. It's part of the faith. We come together to pray through these things, to talk about these things. Maybe God is not asking you directly to cut something out, but he is maybe asking you to take a look at the way you go about it. And just maybe that's what needs to change. What are you willing to sacrifice for the kingdom of God? Do you see the kingdom of God? Have you felt it yet? Maybe that's an even bigger question for another day. So that you understand the value of what it is that is right at your fingertips. May God so inspire us. May he so indwell within us that we may see that kingdom right here, right now. And may we be willing to make the sacrifices necessary that that kingdom may be made manifest. And that we could see it not only in our own lives, but in the lives of all those that we love and all those that we care for. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.